Alright, let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
Of Little T-Bomb.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up in the Silvers family?
I think the Silvers family, there was a lot of ups and downs. So I went to 7 different primary schools.
7?
Yeah. So I felt like I'd just start to make friends and then I'd have to move again. So, because we grew up in Melbourne, then moved to Queensland, and my dad was a bookmaker, so had to follow the money to try and make money because my parents just didn't have money.
Right.
And there was 4 kids and we were living in a 2-bedroom apartment, and my brother basically lived on the floor for the first, all through primary school.
Wow.
Because they were just trying to find ways to make money, and so we had to keep moving. So it wasn't until we moved back to Melbourne when I was probably in grade 3, and then things started to stabilise. But for the first my life, it was like, well, just moving, and then make a friend, and then 2 months later,
Did you realise looking back that you guys didn't have money? Like when you were in it, were you like, we have no money, or it was just life?
I think it was just life. Like I know now, like things like, it took me till my adulthood to eat food that I hadn't tried before, because we ate really plain food because we didn't have money, and you just eat the same thing all the time, and I just assumed that everyone else sort of lived the same way, because you don't really know. When you're a kid, you're not talking to your mate saying, what's it like at your house?
No, yeah.
And I went to a government high school, so I didn't really feel like I was that different, but my parents started to become quite successful in their business as I got older.
Right.
So then I never really felt as a late teenager that I was different in any way.
Did you find it hard going from school to school making new friends, or were you out there and...
No, I remember I used to run away from school. Like my dad would drop me off, and then I'd run across the Gold Coast Highway when we were in Service Paradise and just like leave because I was scared. Because I didn't know how to make friends, really.
No, it's so... I look back and go... Because remember, you go to school and you go, can I play with you today? Like, you buzz your friends before the day would start to make sure you had a play day the whole day. Did you used to do that?
And I just... and then I felt like I would go there and I'd be the odd one out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I struggled when I started high school because I think my older brother was really popular and really good at footy. And he was in Year 12 when I started in Year 7. And, a really good looking guy, and I was like, felt like I was living up to this legacy that my brother had sort of started within the school. And I really sort of struggled in that. And my sister was pretty wild, and she was 2 years above me. So it was always like, you feel like you're living the legacy of your siblings in a way.
Yeah.
And I struggled in Year 7, and then I was in this sort of I was in the popular group, but I was on the fringe, so I was sort of like in and out. It depends on how they felt, because there was 2 girls that sort of ruled it. Yeah.
It's so brutal.
Brutal.
Yeah.
And it was up to them whether, I was in the group sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then I became quite close with a girl, Mikkel, and she was one of those 2 girls, but I ended up forming quite a close friendship with her. And it was at the start of Year 8 that I was first, you can't even comprehend what death is going to be like or feel like. And to come to school and it be like, well, one of the people that you spend all your time with at school has died, you don't really get it, and you just think that it's not true, or she's going to come back, and how can that possibly happen? And that sort of catapulted, for me, I think, how the next sort of year or 2 played out at Ball and High. Like I definitely formed that friendship group that I ended up being quite close with, and it sort of changed our experience, because it was a positive for us as a year level, I suppose, because it made us really look at, how we treated each other.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I think that it made a difference to the bullying and how I felt as a person in that group when we lost Mikkel, but it certainly was something that I never thought that I'd have to think about in my mind.
Not at that age, it's pretty full on, isn't it?
And my parents wouldn't let me go to the funeral.
Why?
Because they thought it would be too much. And I remember being frustrated about that. And now I like to think about all the death that I've encountered as my life went on. They were trying to shelter me from death. And then, and things moved on. And for me, that was the reason why Jim Steins ended up coming to our school was because Mikkel had died and he just started Reach. So he'd only just had the idea and had only done a handful of school workshops.
Right.
And he came to my school because of what had happened. And that then changed my life. So when I think about, you know, the sadness that went along with losing your friend, it also was a catalyst to what changed my life.
Yeah, wow. How did she pass away?
So she was at Live on the Street Festival and her heel got caught in the tram track and a drunk driver came around the corner and hit her. So yeah, it was a real accident obviously. But
wow.
Yeah, but you just never think. That's the first time I lost faith in life. Like, because when you're younger you think, you know, you see it on the TV, but it's like that stuff's never going to happen to anyone you know, or...
Totally.
Yeah.
And you never really forget your first death, I don't think.
No.
Like a boy at my school who I didn't really know got hit by a train and it messed with me so much. He was a year above me and I remember the only thing I ever said to him was a mean thing. He had shoes on. I was like, nice shoes. Like, they were just nothing shoes. I was just being a little bratty bitch. And then I still remember going, the only words you ever spoke to that guy was that a bitchy thing. And I had to sleep in with my mum for years and years after that. Like, it messed with me.
Oh, yeah.
She can't make sense of it because like, you're my age and you're not here anymore.
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't.
Reach is so much a part of our life because so many friends are in it. But in a nutshell, how would you explain what Reach is?
I think Reach is all about self-belief because I've seen Reach from the beginning to what it is now 20 years on, and it's always to me been about encouraging people to just be who they are and give them an environment where it's safe to do that. Because I think it's really simple what Reach does because we don't have those safe environments in life, and it just gives you that. You know, you go to school and it's like everyone sort of puts you down or you're not good enough, and then you always feel like you're living up to this expectation. And when you're in Reach, it's like anything's possible and you actually can do it. Yeah. And everyone's going to stand around you and help you and nurture you to get to that point.
It's pretty incredible. I think a lot of people think it's for really underprivileged kids.
No, it's for everyone.
Totally. Well, Jules Lund went and my partner went. And I look at all of you guys our core group of friends are Reach kids. Yeah. You know, and it's the openness in our relationships is pretty incredible.
Oh, definitely.
Like even the way the boys interact is not like many friendship groups.
No, and because we've all communicated all our fears, but also we've communicated all the amazing things as well, and we've shared it with each other. So I think that's why our friendships are really different. Yeah. And I think why it always worked was about Jim and Paul were really young when they started Reach, so it never felt like they were our parents or our teachers.
Yeah, they were kind of cool too.
Yeah, so they were sort of cool, but now I look back, I don't think they weren't that cool, but they thought they were cool. And then we took over as the next generation, and now like it's run by young people who are 20, 21, 22. Yeah. And I think that's why it really works. It's because you don't want to be told what to do. You experiencing something with a facilitator or a crew member who's going through the same thing. Yeah.
It's pretty unique.
Yeah.
Jim Steins has been a huge impact on your life. Yeah. He came into your life when you were very young. Yeah. Like 13.
Yeah.
And was like a mentor, best friend, father figure, everything.
Yes. Yeah.
What did your relationship with Jim mean to you?
Well, Jim was the closest person to me my whole life, so he was everything. He was like the person that I wanted more than anything for him to be proud of me. He was the person that I wanted to have a drink with. He was the person I wanted to share secrets with, like, you know, and his family are a very important part of my life. And I think it's because he played that role that your parents can't necessarily play, like, because he's able to play it in a different way. So you have this bond that is just something that I treasured more than anything. And he certainly sacrificed a lot for me during the tsunami time, and he put a lot of his personal needs on, you know, out of his mind to help me in that time. And that really pushed our relationship into another sphere because I saw the sacrifices he made for me in that time. Yeah.
I guess when he became sick is when you almost got to repay that
I did.
favour, because you were there the whole process of that. You're very close to Sam, Science, his wife.
Yeah.
When Jim passed, did it bring up things about Troy again? Are you like, why is every man in my life, like, what's going on here?
Yeah. I think more when Jim was diagnosed. When he was diagnosed and he said to me, I don't have long, but then he obviously ended up living another 2.5 years. My first reaction is I went into, this cannot actually be happening. There are two men I've ever been closest to. One's dead and one's about to die. Am I the death fairy? Like, what am I doing wrong? What is someone trying to tell me? And I just actually didn't think I would ever, if Jim died, I was like, I'm never going to get through this. And to be honest, I think a lot of people thought that as well. And I think a lot of people were scared because they didn't think I would get through Jim passing.
Yeah.
But then the biggest gift that Jim gave me was that I did spend those last 6 months intensively with him, and we had so many conversations, and I feel like I was one of the most privileged people in that. And so I was able to talk to him about the fears of what it was going to mean for me, and even close to his deathbed, he's making sure that I was going to be fine past his death. And I think I learned more about myself in that process, and also about life. You know, it just reminded me again that, and I think I was starting to get a bit caught up in what I thought life had to be. Did I have to have a really nice car? Did I have to have all these investment properties? I was trying to keep up with everyone else. And then Jim got sick, and then I just realised, why don't I just do stuff I love, you know? And because I just need to be happy. Because that's what Jim taught me in that time. And I think Jim really was similar to me. It's like we're such high achievers and we want everything now. We want to do everything and change the world and do all that. But Jim missed out on a lot of things because he did that.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And I watch a lot of my really close friends doing the same thing. And I hope that we can learn something from Jim's death and going, what's it all for? Like, I'm still achieving and wanting to be really successful, but it's not going to be at the absolute cost of my relationships or my health or anything like that.
And I reckon that is the biggest thing that and I know a lot of our friends still go, he died for you to learn from him now, like, let's bloody do this, you know, let's not worry about sending that bloody tweet or doing this. Let's be really present with each other, which is really still really hard to do. But you saw of the process that Jim did that. He became really present to his kids and his family, which he wasn't before that.
No, he wasn't. And even the things like not being on your phone when you're around your partner or your family and things like that, because there's so many distractions.
So many.
But in the end, Jim realised how important it was to be just in the moment. Because when you're faced with death, you know that, like...
Yeah, who gives a shit about sending that text?
Who cares how many followers you've got? But
you were one of the youngest in your group, I guess, to fall in love.
Yes.
To get engaged.
Yeah.
And to get married to Troy Bridge.
Yeah.
How old were you?
When we got married, I was 23.
Which is so young,
Yeah.
Trisha. Oh my gosh.
So young. But at the time, I was the youngest in my Reach friendship group, but in the football world, that didn't feel young.
Because he was a Melbourne footballer. So you became a wag.
Yeah.
Didn't you?
Yeah, I did. But in that world, that's what you do. The boys earn money really early, you buy a house really early.
You know, it's like celebrity world, they all do it so much earlier, and same with footballers. It's like you guys are 21 and you've got 5 kids.
Yeah.
Is it just the norm?
It is, because I think it's the money, because you start to do things really early.
Right.
And then I think for a lot of the guys it's a stability, because they live... I know that a lot of people probably think that footy players just run around on the weekends and then they go out drinking and do whatever, but it actually isn't like that. Like, they have to be really routine and it's really strict, and I think for a lot of them they just want to lock a girl down, and then it's like, you know, it's done, and they've got that person there, because it is pretty demanding.
Totally. Did you have to change your life much to fit in with Troy's schedule?
I felt like I did. I was really young though, and I was doing a lot of Reach then, but I did feel like it was a lot about him. Like, because when you're in a relationship with someone that's playing AFL football on television or in media or whatever, I'm sure everyone feels the same, where I never felt like I was ever going to be as good as him, because it was always like, he's an AFL footy player, he's amazing, he's doing amazing things, and I felt like I couldn't live up to that in some ways.
Yeah, right.
But I definitely felt like he supported me in my choices, but you basically make that sacrifice that while they're playing football, it's about them.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I hadn't been to Thailand before, but all my friends had said, you've got to go to PP Island because it's just amazing. And it is amazing. I think it's the most amazing place in the world. And we'd only been there for 2 days, so I didn't know the island that well though. So, which played a part, I think, in what sort of played out on that day. And on the morning of Boxing Day, it was really early, and Troy and I booked in to do a tour where you walk from one side of the island over a mountain to the other side, to Tonsai, which is like the main town. And we went to the activity desk and they said no one else was booked in, so we're not going to run the tour. And we decided we'd do the walk on our own without a tour guide. And that decision is what changed the outcome, because my resort where we were staying wasn't affected. So if we'd stayed there, then, you know, life wouldn't be what it is now. But you can't, and I've thought about that so many times, but yeah, you have to just let it go and say, you know, in life, if we thought about all the decisions we made, you never know, it will drive you crazy. But then we walked over the mountain and back down and just faced into Tonsai, which is surrounded by 2 big cliffs. And the first thing that I noticed was that there was no water sort of close to the shore, and there was a little girl who was sort of tapping her feet like there was a puddle because the water had gone out so much, and she had floaties on, and I noticed that because I thought, well, that's weird, the water's so far out. And that girl ended up being a young Australian girl, Saskia, who lost her life in the tsunami, which I obviously didn't know then, but she was with an Australian woman that was killed as well. And there was hardly anyone on the beach because it was really early on Boxing Day morning. And then I looked up and it looked like there was a canoe on top of the on top of the cliff, but it was the tsunami travelling behind the cliff. So at that stage it was about 7 meters high, and that's when it was like the noise started. So it was like bang, like this noise that is just like a huge rush of water, but it's so hard to describe how loud it is. It's so loud, like so unbelievably loud. But it's, a lot of people think it's like a wave breaking, but it's not. It's a surge of water coming towards you. And but I didn't know what it was. I was like, and you think it's going to stop. When it was so close to me, I was like, that water is not coming, is not going to knock me over.
How close did it get to you? Like you saw it coming to you?
Yeah, then we ran onto a balcony of a bungalow. So there used to be 113 bungalows on Tonsai Beach, and every single person lost their lives in those bungalows. We jumped onto the balcony of one and turned around. We tried to open the door actually, but it was locked. And then we turned around and were on the balcony and just looked at it. And it was coming so fast, and I was just like, it's going to stop. And Troy just yelled, it was so loud, and he just yelled at me and said, try and keep your head out of the water. That's all you got to do.
Can you, at this moment when this is happening, was it happening so quick that you couldn't even really think, what's going on here? Were you just going into automatic survival?
It was like I didn't know what was going on, and I just believed it was going to stop. I wasn't facing into it going, this is going to kill 300,000 people, and the world as I know it is never going to be the same. Like you just have a belief in the universe that it was going to stop. And I was actually, to be honest, I was thinking, fuck, my camera's going to get wet.
Yeah, right. So
yeah.
you can't know what's happening.
No.
And so when he said keep your head above the water,
then just after that happened, just after I heard him say that, he grabbed me, and he was a lot taller than me, and sort of lifted me up against his side, and then we got knocked by the tsunami, by the wave, and then I was underwater. And the impact was really hard the first time because there was a bungalow right in front of us, so I felt the force of the bungalow, but I felt it mainly on the side that Troy was on. So I think that he got hit by it, and from all reports of years later of his autopsy, he died from head injuries, not drowning. So I think that he must have died pretty soon after that first impact, because I didn't feel him again, and I didn't know like where he was after that. And then you're just in the water, like, and mind's just going everywhere, like what is going on, you're panicking. It was like fast, like it's like a washing machine sort of thing, and it's something you can never think's happening to you, but it is happening, but you just can't do anything about it. Yeah.
And there's all debris in there as well.
Oh yeah, so there was all debris, and then and I was like, I'm dying on my honeymoon. I remember just thinking, I'm dying on my honeymoon, and I thought, I said to myself, is Troy going to be okay without me? Like, that was my concern. And then it subsided, and I went, oh my God, I've survived. Like, I was so relieved. And then the second wave came, and the second wave was 3 times faster than the first. And that's when most people were killed on PPI Island, was in the second one. And I was already in the water, and just somehow, I've got no idea, I travelled 465 metres from where I started to where I ended up, and I just managed, there was only 2 buildings that stayed half upright, and I just managed to go into one. So I was stopped by a building.
Wow.
So of all the places for me to end up, like, it's an absolute miracle. When I finally was able to call home to my mum, I remember I called, and my mum answered, and I didn't know at the time, but there was over 40 people in my parents' house, because they'd been told, if you hadn't heard, because this is 48 hours later, if you haven't heard, you need to plan the funeral and think about it. So they've all, starting a grieving process. And then I'm on the phone, and the only thing I said was, have you heard from Troy? Because I just thought that once I called home, he must have been rescued as well. And they were like, is he not with you? And I was like, no. And then I just said to my mum, you need to come here. And I only had a minute to talk to her on the phone. And then somehow I got off the phone, and she started liaising with a volunteer. My mum had never been overseas before. And Jim Steins called Steve Bracks, who was a Premier of Victoria at the time, and got the passport office opened on the 28th. And my mum was over there within 14 hours of the phone call. And it was just all those little things that people did to help me was just amazing. And I never knew how to thank anyone.
But you never needed to, my
Yeah.
God. I love that's what you think.
Yeah, I was always like, shit, I should write them a card.
I really should get them a bunch of flowers. Because back here, we were getting text messages, and the media was reporting that Troy had been found. Did that information make it to you?
Yeah, so I had, they were afraid I was going to lose my leg at one point, so this was about day 4, and this is when my sister was there, and they had to rush me to Bangkok because they thought I was going to lose my leg, and at that time my face was quite disfigured, and they thought I needed to have an emergency surgery. And while I was on the flight to get into surgery, I got off the plane, and my sister had the mobile. She turned it on, and there was, like, I can't tell you, there would have been over 100 messages, because it had been reported in the media that Troy had been found. And Tracy looked at the messages, she said one of them out loud, she said, Troy's been found. And then she was like, hold on, hang on, no, I don't know if he has. So it was this 5 minutes of just like, I was so relieved, and then I was like, then so devastated all over again.
Yeah.
And look, it was a mix-up. There was apparent sightings of him when I was in hospital. I had 4 major surgeries over the next 5 days. So I was, under general, which you shouldn't go under that many times. They needed to do it to save my leg, really. But yeah, there was a few sightings, and I think there was a bit of mix-up because the media started calling me Trisha Broadbridge, and which is T Broadbridge, and I'd been obviously registered as being found, and that I was still alive, and I think there was some sort of mix-up. And I don't blame anyone for it, but yeah, one of the networks did report on it without knowing whether it was right. Yeah.
So where were you, and when was it that you had the final
that I knew that he was dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was, funnily enough, it was like, by this stage it was the 2nd of January, and I'd sent my sister and Emily home the day before, and I just said, there's no point in being here, because, you know, because I couldn't physically walk, they'd gone and looked through piles of dead bodies on the streets. They'd gone every day to the consulate, the Australian government were looking, the media were looking, everyone was looking, and we couldn't find him. And the doctors said they would release me to an Australian doctor in a few days' time. So I'd sent them home, and then I just remember thinking, I just want to be home now. I was ready to come home, and I was maybe hoping that something was going to be different when I came home. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I was in a wheelchair at the Bangkok airport, and we were just about to get on the flight, and my mum got her phone out of her handbag to turn it off, and there was all these messages on there, and there was missed calls. There was about 30 missed calls from Troy's dad, and then who was also over there looking for Troy's body. And then my mum called him back, and then I got on the phone, and I had to confirm which shoulder Troy had a nail, because he had 3 shoulder reconstructions, and during one of them they put a bolt in his shoulder, and I had to confirm which side. And then about 10 minutes later we got the phone call back saying that his body's been found. And I just remember I was sitting in Bangkok airport, and I was just like, all these people were around, no one was speaking English, and I just didn't know what to do. I couldn't even walk anywhere, so I was stuck in this chair. So my mum started pushing me in the chair, and I actually said, you have to leave me. So I made her leave me alone, and I just sat there, and I just was like, this cannot be happening. Just could not believe it was happening.